Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and it's my distinct pleasure to have Dennis Goedegebuure with us today. Dennis is a growth marketing executive with nearly 20 years of experience working for big brands that you'll all know: eBay, PayPal, Fanatics, and Airbnb. Dennis, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Stephan. It's a pleasure.
It's so great to have you on the show, Dennis. And I would love for us to start off by sharing a bit of your origin story with our listener so that they understand that you're the real deal. Like, you've been doing some incredible work at really big companies over many years, like eBay. And yeah, you've had impacts that have driven countless new users to these different platforms that we all use and know. So could you share a bit about this?
Yeah, sure. Originally Dutch, that's where my name is also coming from. I don't hold anybody to it to a good pronunciation. It's always a fun gimmick on conferences because I'm the guy with the difficult last name that nobody can pronounce, but no Dennis G. Oh, it's Dennis, that guy. So I originally Dutch. I started at eBay in an internet marketing field where we really pioneered the growth channels for eBay in the Netherlands when the company just bought a company which was a European clone, eBazaar. And at that moment, they started to roll out the eBay playbook in Europe, where the eBazaar was more focused on more traditional TV and radio advertising. And eBay traditionally only marketed online, where we were driving new users to a platform. So started there in 2002. Did a lot of interesting projects as a small country in the bigger Europe field. We were well known for our innovation. With scarce resources, we were making got new ideas into our playbook. And that got the eye of the headquarters on me, which resulted in a move to Silicon Valley in San Jose to take up a very international coordinating role in eBay, where I was looking after the SEO channel to coordinate best practices and priorities for eBay worldwide, where it was a decentral organization for a long time. And at a certain moment, we centralized it, and I became the director of SEO for eBay worldwide, which was a very interesting job. You're working on a very large site with a lot of traffic and also a lot of incoming links, which we can talk about a little bit later. Some innovation that we brought to the platform. But that was a good school for me to be educated around everything around growth marketing or online marketing, and that got me the foundation for my later work at other companies, like you mentioned, Airbnb, Fanatics, and PayPal. So I just spent around 15 years in the US, and we recently relocated back to the Netherlands. So this call is taking place from both sides of the world, Stephan, and that's always fun. But the COVID situation and the notion that we couldn't jump on an airplane to go visit our parents in the Netherlands made us realize that we were very far away, and was time to move back after 15 years. So we're back in the homeland, and still looking for new ways of driving growth marketing for companies. So we can talk a little bit about what's next for Dennis in the coming hour.
Yes.
But that got me where we are right now. eBay was really my foundation for a lot of the work that I'm doing.
Yes. And what are you up to now? What's capturing your attention, and what are the the big challenges you're facing now?
Yeah, so in my search for a new job or a new position, I was looking for a company that could hire me at a global role. So I was looking for a global scale at a growing vertical, and with the ambition to invest in the program that I was going to put together. So I found that in a company called Bitdefender, which is in a cybersecurity vertical, and I'm the VP of new customer acquisition for Bitdefender worldwide. Which is at the time of this recording, we're planning our announcement, which is eminent to the public view.
Awesome. Sounds
So you're getting the scoop
okay.
here.
All right.
Absolutely.
So what's the scoop? What's the exciting stuff happening at Bitdefender?
So the company is 20 years old, growing in both the enterprise and on the consumer side. There's a number of ideas that I had to join Bitdefender. One is the founder is very charismatic and know where he wants to go. He's actually a former mathematician from the Communist Party. When there was a revolution, he actually sat down at the kitchen table and thought, where am I going to get my next paycheck? And founded a cybersecurity company together with his wife, and grew that in a global recognized brand that delivers a very good product. Not well known to the extent that we would like to be, but that's why I come to help the team to build a stronger brand and the narrative within the consumer space, where I see an opportunity for marketing to not only grow the pie for Bitdefender in the cybersecurity vertical, but also not only grow the piece of the pie in the vertical of cybersecurity, but also grow the full pie, where the consumers are not very educated around every threat that is happening, especially with more devices being connected. You never know when your fridge starts to mine Bitcoin because you clicked on a link and your whole network is compromised.
Yes. And
So I
that
see this
mining
as a
Bitcoin doesn't actually go into your crypto wallet.
exactly. So I see there is an opportunity for a company to play a bigger role here, and that's where my left brain and right brain can work together in good data-driven storytelling that helps the brand, but also looking at the performance marketing channels, not only the SEO but also the page channels, to drive new consumers through the funnel and grow the company.
Mhm. That's such a great idea and modality is data-driven storytelling. We're gonna have to go into that. One thing I want to mention before
I have
we,
some great
yeah,
examples.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask you for those in a minute, but I want to make a point here that I think is a little off topic, but very important for our listener, and that is that everybody's security needs to be shored up. Everybody's. It's not a question of are you secure yet, but where are your biggest vulnerabilities? Because everybody has vulnerabilities. So if you can think of a really low hanging fruit, simple security measure to implement, what would it be, Dennis? For anybody, our
I
listener.
think it's most important. One of the driving factors is that somebody very near to me was scammed through social engineering, where they used my name and Dutch telephone number with WhatsApp to impersonate me and get money to transfer it over. So anytime you get messages that looks like it's for somebody that you know or is very near to you and asking for money, pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and check if that person is really asking for that money. and otherwise just ignore, block it, and report. Last week there was a big story about the scams that are going on with peer-to-peer money transferring apps, where Bank of America, two of Bank of America customers actually got scammed through the Zelle app, and they could eventually get their money back. But it's so easy to spoof in phone number where it looks like you're talking with the bank that calls you up or sends you messages, and then you log in to your account and boom, your money's gone. So be very, very careful. Also with like posting information online. Nobody needs to know where you grew up in the first street that you lived in or your first car that you had, because those are all the secret questions that are being asked to retrieve your password.
Yeah, your first pet's name as well. That's like, oh, I remember those days with
Yeah.
little Fluffy. Yeah, not good.
The quizzes on social media that are asking these kind of questions, just ignore them and don't participate, because it's all collecting data about your profile, either to scam you or your loved ones.
Right, right. Now, one thing I'm surprised by that is such a no-brainer, I think, is two-factor authentication and how few people are utilizing that, especially for the really important, uh, like your most important social accounts, your most important financial accounts, etc. Uh, you need to have 2FA in place across the board. In fact, I just came across this surprising stat that Twitter recently disclosed that the number of accounts using two-factor authentication is only 2.3%.
Wow, that's really low.
Really low.
Yeah, two-factor authentication, and I once read an article about somebody that got their whole identity stolen by social engineering and not having two-factor authentication, and lost a very valuable domain because they were just going into Gmail accounts and then retrieving passwords using that Gmail account, and then getting into a GoDaddy account and then transferring the domain out, and having two-factor authentication. It can prevent a lot of these headaches.
Yeah. Geez. Wild. It's really important
It's
to
a
protect
very,
yourself.
very interesting field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the announcement from Bitdefender?
Just that I joined Bitdefender.
Oh, okay.
We're growing. We're growing with a number of high level executives that are being hired, and I've waited until we could announce it after the holiday break. I actually joined already in May, so I've been there 5 weeks now, or 5 months, and so far I traveled one time to Bucharest, which is last week.
Bucharest. I've been there. It's a really cool place.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I went with my wife to Transylvania up in like what is it? Brashov? Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've only seen the old town from walking over there, and the hotel.
Oh,
the
okay.
office.
Next time
quick,
you have to
quick in and out.
do
and next week I'm going to be there as well.
Cool. Nice. All right. So, what would be a great example of data-driven storytelling that you could share, and maybe how you got how you got this story, or how this evolved with your involvement? That would be great.
Yeah. So it was, I believe, in 2009 when Steve Jobs, the first time, he went on Macworld in January and presented the iPad. Remember, he was like, we call it the iPad. And I was at eBay at the time, and I was deeply entrenched in all the internal keyword dashboards, where the product was announced beginning of January in 2009, and then it was going on sale only 6 months later in June. But the very interesting part is that we saw the internal keyword searches on eBay spike the moment that Steve presented the iPad. So obviously, as a true marketeer, I see an opportunity here, because at that point, I don't know if you remember, it was the high times of dig.com, where social submitted news stories hitting the Dig homepage could crash your server. Everything Apple was reaching the homepage of Dig, and Apple, as a secretive company, didn't produce any sales data of their new introduced products. So I saw an opportunity here when the time comes when they were actually going on sale to do something with this, something meaningful that we could use to highlight the opportunity to buy iPads on eBay. And especially because Apple announced that they would only go on sale in the US first, and 6 months later they will be introduced international. So eBay, as the worldwide marketplace, is the perfect place to buy your iPad if you really, really want one and have it shipped over to you. So they went on sale for the first 2 weeks. I collected all the data, had custom queries written to get number of iPads sold on eBay, at what price, and where they would be shipping to from the US. I went on, at that moment it was called Elance, now it's Upwork. I got a designer from Argentina produce a infographic for me that was showing where the iPads were being sold to around the world. I dropped an email to two of my friends here in the Netherlands who run a very large tech blog, thenextweb.com. And I said, I have a great story for you to be published. And if you can give me a editor account, I run it by you first, but then we can launch it. And so without asking for permission of the eBay PR team, but I said to my boss at the time, like, listen, we need to do this. If I go through them, it will take ages to get all the approvals. Can you read through the article and give me your blessing? And then we ask for forgiveness later. And so we launched that on thenextweb.com with the infographic, and that just blew up. It was picked up on all the big tech publications, New York Times, on Time magazine, and of course TechCrunch and 9 to 5 Mac. But that really got me thinking around how you can create better storytelling using the data that you possess and can get value out of it. The funny thing is that on that day, we presented an overview of our SEO efforts to the CTO of eBay. And part of that overview was how we better should harness our data into better stories to tell using our PR efforts. And the CTO came forward. He's like, yeah, I saw this great article today of our PR team talking about the iPads that were being sold on eBay around the world. And my boss started laughing and like, yeah, that was him putting that story there. And we instantly got the approval to do that at scale. So that is a great example of how we used data-driven storytelling. With the velocity of items being sold on eBay, we could get stories anywhere you would cut it. But the funny thing is that I actually used that story as well to land my next job at PayPal. So 2 years ago, when I was looking for a new opportunity and an email came in my inbox to meet with the CMO of PayPal, she used to work for Steve Jobs at Apple at the time when the iPad was launched. So the first thing I walk into that conversation is like, I already worked for you, but you didn't know it yet. And so I showed her the article and she said, I saw that back then. I didn't like it because they were never giving any sales data. But I like it now. Let's discuss what we want to do here at PayPal. And so that was instantly another life for that story that I did 10 years before that helped me get a great introduction to an amazing marketeer that I know that is I call still one of my friends, Allison
That's
Johnson.
awesome. And there are no coincidences, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what would be another example of a data-driven storytelling that would have happened maybe at another organization that you were at, such as PayPal, or something that you're cooking up at Bitdefender? Something that is a little more contemporary.
Yeah, so when I was at Fanatics, I was working for the same boss as with eBay, where I was getting a lot of freedom to explore different opportunities of data and data-driven storytelling, where we built a full series of blog posts around the jersey evolution of a lot of the teams. So you know that Fanatics is the largest e-commerce merchandise retailer for sports, where the product was front and center of the story. So we would go and analyze every aspect of a jersey of a sports team and write about the evolution, how it changed over time with either colors or little nuances in the designs. And so we were starting to get traction on that. And the data that I was collecting through Google Search Console was helping us to inform the next story. So, for instance, the Chicago Bears have a three-letter acronym on their sleeve, TSH or THS, which stands for one of the founders of the NFL. And so, whenever time the Bears were playing, I would see the queries, what GSH stands for, go through the roof. I was looking at peaks. So that informed me that we needed to create more stories around that acronym. Another one is that the Seattle Seahawks were playing in their color rush jersey, which is bright green, which is not the normal color. And so we always saw the spikes in traffic on those days that they played in those jerseys be twice as big as the normal spikes. So I took that story to our product development organization and said, listen, there seemed to be something with this color. Maybe we can do something more about it. So we started to innovate new products based on the data that we saw from these kind of blog posts, which is quite innovative if you ask me, where usually when you're looking at the manufacturing of products within the garments vertical is more fashion driven or looking at what are the trends. We just looked at the data that the fans really liked and what we could do with that with new product design.
Yeah, very cool. Now, our listener might think to themselves, I'm not a big recognized brand with millions of visits to my website like Fanatics or eBay. What am I supposed to do with this concept of data-driven storytelling? Is there anything here for me? And I instinctively feel like the answer is a yes, that even somebody who's a local plumber could come up with some really compelling data-driven storytelling, right? And let's actually use that as an example. Somebody
Absolutely.
who's been in business, let's say for 20 years, and they've kept their records of their their financial records and something like QuickBooks or whatever, so they can pull up data like how many times they were called out to clean drains, how many were emergency visits, how many times did they find a a previous plumber left a piece of equipment in the pipes. That actually happened here in the house we're living in. A previous plumber left a piece of a snake inside of the pipes, or a telescoping camera piece inside of the pipes, something like that. I was like, what?
So it appears that the day after Thanksgiving is the best plumbing day, because a lot of people are rinsing their plates through the normal sink, and there's a lot of grease that goes with hot water, and then it is melting through the hot water, and then it cools off again in the pipe, and then it blocks
That's
the
funny
pipe.
that
So
the
what can you
first
do
thing I
with
was thinking when you were saying like that's the biggest day for calling in plumbers, I was thinking like, okay, everybody ate too much and then they're going to the bathroom. Okay, so there's a little more
luckily
innocent.
it,
Your version.
yeah, no, it's more that people rinse it and drain it through the sink, and it appears that that is the biggest emergency day where plumbers are getting called in for on unclogging the sink, where that could be a great data-driven post, uh, thinking through the and I'm just going on a riff here, like thinking through the temperature that might has caused you to put more grease into the into the sauce or the stuffing, where you're getting extra clogged up pipes because you wanted to have everybody get a warm feeling or something like that. Can you actually compare the emergencies on the day after Thanksgiving with some correlating events? Either it's because some football team has won the day after Thanksgiving, or there were extra big sales on Black Friday, and so people were not paying attention to rinsing off their plates, something like that. Can you actually put that correlation into the data that you see as a plumber and whip up some funny, interesting post that is very easy to digest and consumable and makes everybody laugh about the emergency that you might have had and never will have because it was costing you a fortune to get a plumber? Something like that. I'm just brainstorming
Yeah,
here.
I
So
like that
I can
angle of even
see
just
a lot of these
imagine
things.
having a holiday that you called National Plumbing Emergency Day or something because it's the day after Thanksgiving. Yes, it's also Black Friday, but it's also a big day for plumbers, and you just named it a holiday. And here's why. And you could do a little press release around it. You could pitch news outlets
Exactly.
around that. I remember years ago, I heard about freshpair.com creating a holiday they called it National Underwear Day. And they celebrated
Yeah.
it by getting a bunch of people to agree to do a fun run in Manhattan in their underwear. And then, of course, that got a lot of press and everything. It's pretty genius. And I think that's now an accepted thing that National Underwear Day is a particular day of the year every year, even a decade later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. For National Plumber Day, let's do it on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. It gives you enough time to watch football and do some shopping, and then on Saturday you call your plumber, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. So, what would be an example of data-driven storytelling that was so expanded upon or expounded upon, I guess, that it was turned into a book? Can you think of anything where it was not just a 2,000 word article or something, but it was an actual book?
Um, I can't remember one of the books. I think that a lot of this data-driven storytelling, the data tells a story already, and I don't know if it's maybe the art of telling a story with data can become in a book, but if the data is already being like published, then it becomes stale very easily. Um, I don't know if you have read a book around these kind of topics, Stephan, but I haven't seen one story that is turned into a
Hmm.
book.
Well, there's these these books that are like visual masterpieces. I forget the name of the author, but it's all based on data. I'm going to Google it.
There is. I have two books that is about the data driven storytelling process. It's not about one day story itself. And then also I have got two books, so I can look up the books if you
Oh,
want.
Edward Tufte.
But
That's the author, Edward Tufte. Have you heard of him?
no, I might have a book from him.
Yeah, he's a statistician, and he's got some books on data visualization that are like works of art. They're really impressive. They're worthy of being coffee table books. Yeah, there's one called The
Let me
Visual
just
Display of
quickly.
Quantitative Information. Now, that's not a one kind of set of data that's turned into a storytelling book.
Yeah,
It's a visual representation of a lot of data in a beautiful format. But that's something that comes to mind that I came across years ago. So yeah.
yeah, I have a book, and I have it somewhere in store. It's Visualize This: The Flow Data Guide to Design Visualization and Statistics, which tells you a little bit about how can you use data and then maps to visualize it in a very consumable way that gets the message across. And I think if you ask me what kind of interesting skills I would like to develop further, is the art of storytelling through visualization. So pictures are the new headlines, where your headline might get somebody's attention, but these days when people are scrolling faster and faster, a picture tells 1,000 words, and if you are able to visualize a story using data or a map or some sort of way to grab the attention of the person that you want to interact with your story, that is a unique skill set, I think, that could really be valuable in the new
Mm-hmm.
marketing.
I don't know if this is an example really of data-driven storytelling, but this comes to mind. I'm going to share it anyways. So the author Michael Crichton, he was just phenomenal. I loved his books. I remember one of my favorite reads was of fiction of his was Prey, Prey, and it was about the dangers of nanotechnology, and once you could get uh, true molecular nanotechnology where they were self-replicating, these nanobots could then turn into swarms, and then those swarms could come after you and whatever else, right? So there was a lot of data. He did a ton of research in all of
Yeah,
his books. It just was full of data. He did so much research, and it felt very credible because of that. So that's on an extreme example because now we're talking about actual fiction instead of a nonfiction sort of uh, businessy type resource book. But I think
yeah,
we can learn a lot from these kinds of storytellers: Michael Crichton, Steve King, Neil Stevenson, yeah, who wrote The Diamond Age, which is one of my favorite uh, books. It's all about again nanotechnology, and he also wrote Snow Crash, which is another phenomenal book. Oh, and then there's the books that were Ready Player One was written by Ernest Cline. Did you ever see the movie or read the book?
I have not. I've been pretty preoccupied with a number of things in my life that prevent me from a lot of reading
Well, you can listen
lately,
to it.
mainly
Yeah,
for
yeah,
kids.
yeah. No, I
Yeah,
can relate. I've got a 2-year-old, so keeps me busy. But
I
there's
know.
an audiobook version of Ready Player One, and it's phenomenal. It really is good, and it's better than the movie. Definitely better than the movie. And the movie is really fun and enjoyable. It's a Steven Spielberg movie. He's good at his craft, but the book is
Yeah,
it's at another level.
it's usually the case. The book is better
Yeah,
than the movie,
yeah. So, anyways,
right?
storytelling crucially important. When you weave in
Yeah.
data, makes the storytelling more credible. But when you start with the data and you see what stories you can come up with based on the data, that's even better because there's stuff that will present itself to you that you'll never have thought of.
Yeah, so I had a short stint between eBay and Airbnb where I worked for GeekNet. And GeekNet was a small media company with some software properties where we were selling media advertising. And that is where I created a story that unfortunately came true a couple months later. But when I looked at the warming up of the oceans and the bigger hurricanes that were a result of global warming, we created an infographic which showed the data centers at the East Coast in jeopardy when a big storm would hit. So we created like more data into the cloud, and that was obviously a metaphor for the hurricanes that were also big clouds. So you had that good connection, and then a couple months later, the big storm Sandy hit New York, where a number of data centers were knocked out. And of course, uh, we never wanted this become true, but it goes to show that if you're able to connect certain elements, like okay, what do we see in when things are happening in the world, like bigger hurricanes due to warming up of the ocean, and what on the coastline, what is in jeopardy at that point. I saw that the opportunity was there to create a story that unfortunately came true. You can still look that up as well
Hmm.
online. With the infographic, but I have this interest in weather and in temperatures and other things that are happening around us, to connect that with other things that you can use in the storytelling. We saw that as well at Fanatics, where big ice storms or big snowstorms could impact our delivery of a product, because we had a fulfillment center in Ohio, and during the peak season in the shopping seasons, one big snowstorm comes along, and the trucks that have to pick up the packages might not be able to come to the fulfillment center. So we built actually a model that could look at weather patterns and temperatures and see if we can predict some of the fulfillment of the Christmas shopping of our customers at that moment in time.
Interesting.
So I'm always looking for those kind of correlations where you can predict certain outcomes that you either spin into a story or a business problem that you need to solve for. And the Fanatics example, it was not that I was the driving factor for it, but it's more like how can you use these kind of like data feeds that are generally I saw the mosquito. Uh, the data feeds that are available, how can you use those?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny that it's possible to look a bit prophetic with good data, right? You can. I think there's actually maybe a mix of just good intuition and good data mining to look for trends and uh, anomalies and different things that could be shocking or surprising to people, and merge those two things in. I think that there might have been for you an intuitive hit that came in that helped you to identify some of these opportunities, or these bring to the forefront some of these key issues before they actually reared their ugly head.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to do right now with Bitdefender. I don't have the access to all our data yet because some of the data is you need a higher clearance level. So I've been only 5 months here, so we'll eventually get there somewhere where looking at the data and see what could happen to make sure that we either build product that allows us to stop certain things to happen to our consumers, or proactively warn them in a way that doesn't speed up the process of, or make other people more aware of a vulnerability, because you're sitting in this highly classified world where some of the bugs or vulnerabilities cannot be openly talked about, but do need to be addressed to keep everybody safe.
I mean, one thing that pops to my mind that is just like was so shocking is a demonstration where a hacker was breaking into a car while the person was driving that car. So this person was
I've seen that.
just on their computer. Someone else was driving like on a track or whatever, and the guy was able to take control of the car and make it stop on its own, or turn signals on and things like that, without the driver's involvement. It was pretty frightening.
And that's the scary part. Just imagine all the Wi-Fi kids monitors or the Ring doorbell. You're locking your front door. I've seen it happen as well. Little movies where they steal a car, like the luxury car that is parked in front of a house, and they just go with a sensor over the front door to pick up the signal of the key that is laying inside, and switch it off, turn on the car, and just drive off. So that's just a car that will be stolen. It's not anybody in harm's way. But the example that you mentioned is really frightening, because there's nothing at that point you can do anymore. And you're really at the mercy of a bad actor that can take over your car and do with you what they want.
And you mentioned the baby monitors, like those are essentially spy cameras in the house that you've put in there yourself.
Yeah.
And who knows what someone can do with that data. Talk about negative data storytelling there. Like they could, if there's stuff that you didn't want to have filmed, well, that's a spy camera that you've installed yourself.
Well, even the Ring doorbell can be used in that kind of way to get some data, how many packages you order. So then the amount of packages delivered to your door can be picked up by somebody, and then they have an address to steal your stuff.
It's an interesting world we live in.
That's what I mean. There's more education needed for the average consumer.
Well, let's talk a bit about intuition. I'm curious to hear of some times where you were able to pull in your intuition to achieve something really cool, with whatever companies you were working for at that time, maybe involving some campaigns or a big, maybe counterintuitive even business decision that people would have maybe faced, might have faced some skepticism over, or some resistance about, but you were able to prevail and prove that was just the thing that the company needed.
Yeah, so it was 2014 January when I was working at Airbnb. I was talking to a good friend of mine a German SEO guy, Marcus Standberg,
Yeah.
and
Marcus,
well,
the founder
we were talking about
of SEO Oktoberfest and of Right,
right,
RYTE, and he was actually a
yeah,
past guest on this podcast. So if you're listener
yeah.
are interested in he's brilliant. So definitely check out his episode if it interests you. Yeah.
So we were talking about how we could actually do some storytelling campaigns for Airbnb in the German market that would naturally earn incoming links for SEO. And at that point in time, made me realize it was 2014. I grew up in Europe with the Berlin Wall as part of the separation between East and West. And so it made me realize that in 2014 it was coming the 25th year anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. And we had this unique story that was submitted by one of our guests that was used already a couple of times by the founders in PR, on stage, in interviews on TV, but was never turned into a full marketing campaign that we could use to showcase how great traveling on Airbnb could be. And so in that call, I was talking to Marcus about it, and I said, oh my God, it's the 25th year anniversary of the Berlin Wall falling down. This story can be something great. And Marcus was like, dude, we have to do something with this. And so that spiraled into a number of pitches within the company. And it wasn't until I was asked to onboard a new CMO who came from Coca-Cola, Jonathan Mildenhall. And he wrote, I don't know if you remember that Coca-Cola content strategy, Content 2020 YouTube video that was going around in our circles for years ago. I believe it was 2012, 13 that they published that. So remember 2012 or 13, content marketing was all the rage in SEO because we needed to create more content. So what did we do? Content marketing. And then here was Coca-Cola spending $4 billion in marketing, talking about content strategy. And so we all ate it up. And this is the guy who pioneered that marketing strategy for Coca-Cola, who became my boss. So I went through the onboarding with him, and in my first deep dive on SEO, we were talking about content marketing and how we could use this unique story that was submitted to us. We told it a number of times, but as a way to instill that belong anywhere mission of Airbnb, of the new brand. So within 6 months, we built a campaign that resulted in his first big campaign for Airbnb, but it was a beautiful campaign that we told during that weekend of the 25th year anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. And we created a whole campaign around it on TV and social amplification and deeper content that people could go travel to Berlin during that weekend. And that was a big success. But it took definitely some hard selling internally to actually use a story that was already told so many times in a marketing campaign. But because it was so cultural relevant and it was beautifully done in an animation video, we got a big success out of it during that weekend.
That's cool.
And it was still used a month afterwards as an example of from people saying, oh my God, it was such a beautiful story and beautiful campaign. And I had that intuition beginning of 2014 that because it was the 25th anniversary, I knew how it would be celebrated within Germany and the bigger Europe because I grew up in Europe. And people here in the US do not always understand how the West and East were really put against each other through media, through our daily lives, so like the history that was learning in school, while the other side, the people on the other side, were just human as well. So there's a bigger story behind that animated video where there's still walls being built in the world, where both sides of that wall, there are people living there who are taught to hate each other, but they actually could love each other the way that these two guys who met in the Airbnb
Oh,
can as
that's
well.
cool. That reminds me of something I learned from Ephraim Olszewski, who was a past guest on this podcast and on my other show on Get Yourself Optimized. And one thing he taught me is that there's this invisible wall of context that separates you from the person you're in conversation with. And if you are willing to climb that wall and get into their world, see the world through their eyes, walk the world in their shoes, you can build rapport and relatedness. And it doesn't count if
Yeah.
you simply get their world. That doesn't cut it for that person on the other side of that wall, that invisible wall. It has to be that the person feels gotten by you. That's where the difference is. Yeah. So
Yeah. So the story is really profound because here were two former guards on the Berlin Wall, one from the east, one from the west, and they met each other in an Airbnb, and they were taught to be each other's enemy in the past, but now they could actually share experiences, and they found out they had a lot in common. So it was beautiful. It was a beautiful
wow.
story
And
to
was it
tell.
real? Was it based on fact?
Yeah, it was a real story. So that's what made it
Wow.
even more profound, because he was a man who used to be a guard at the west side, but he moved away because he couldn't bear the thought of having an enemy, and he always carried something with him that didn't allow him to live his life to the fullest. And so his daughter brought him back to Berlin and booked the Airbnb on the east side. And the guy who came to deliver the key, they started talking like, "Well, why are you here?" And they found out that they were each other's shadows at the Berlin Wall. And so the story that the guy from the east side started to tell, when the wall came down, he started to travel on his bicycle through Europe and stayed at people's houses. So that was also an angle that we didn't use in the actual campaign, but he could have been the original
Mm.
Airbnb guest because he was staying on people's houses while traveling.
As I said earlier in this conversation, that there are no coincidences. I really believe that nothing is random. And here you have another example of that, where what are the odds that somebody who was
Yeah,
a previous guard stays at an Airbnb, and the person showing up to deliver the key was his counterpart on the East. Amazing.
exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing story. But the way it was taught in the animated video is also was very touchy, and which allows us to travel very far in all kind of media and the
Yeah.
attention that we
Is that
get.
video still available? If I can maybe embed it
Yeah,
into the show notes for this episode, so our listener can go check that out and watch the video.
absolutely. You will see it on my LinkedIn profile because it's one of the parts in my work that I call the best work in my career, next to something that I did
Yeah,
at
that's
eBay.
cool. And when we were talking earlier about, I was asking you, is there an example of a book that data-driven storytelling was turned into an entire book? I could see Airbnb creating a book all about how to be an Airbnb nomad, how to belong anywhere. And it would be based on data, like what are the best excursions, experiences, places to stay, cities to visit, the most ideal track to
Absolutely.
take, and that could be turned into an incredible book.
So they actually launched a magazine called Pineapple a couple of years ago, which did exactly that. But then four versions or four editions per year with the latest travel tips and a focus on one of the continents, with hosts being highlighted into the magazine as well. So very much looking at how can we make the experience even better. And that's so unique about Airbnb, I think, as a technology company, but being founded by two guys who went to a designer school, to RISD. They look at the world differently than technologists. And they're looking at the world and they visualize the world, how they would like to build it, and then do it. And that's obviously one of the biggest successes for Airbnb is they look to improve the full customer journey and the experience, not only that moment when you book something and then you're on your own. And that's quite unique what they built.
And for our listener who's not familiar with RISD, that is a very prestigious school for design, Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. And very cool. Okay, so I know we're running out of time here, so I wanted for our last question to get very much in the heart here. Not that we haven't been, but I would love for you to share for our listener one of the most profound things that you have learned through whatever your toughest challenge was. Some people go through horrible divorce or dissolution of their marriage. Some people have a near-death experience. Some people have a bankruptcy. I just interviewed somebody earlier this week for my other podcast, Torsten Lang, and he is a phenomenal world expert in the area of Reiki. And how he got started in that was he had to go through bankruptcy. I mean, he didn't have to. He went through bankruptcy. That was how, that was his dark night of the soul that took him to the point of recognizing that he had healing hands. And then he then really went fully into that and developed a worldwide level of expertise in it. So I'm curious, what would be your biggest takeaway from your biggest challenge or dark night of the soul or near-death experience or whatever?
So I think, the three things pop into my mind, and either it's dark or not. But the moment where I got my new contract to move to the US, I was panicking and like, what if I fail? And then I think back to a book called about dealing with change, Who Moved My Cheese? And one of the rules there is, what would you do if you were not afraid? And that's where it clicked for me. It's like, okay, I can always go back. And like, if I fail, then at least I tried. And so I did that. And even with like, the original goal was to move 2, 3, 4 years, turn into 15. And I had met my then girlfriend just 1.5 months before, and she moved with me. And so I moved countries, got married, got a daughter, and got a new job all in 1 year. So just think through, what would you do if you were not afraid? And then back in 2017, we were expecting our 4th child, and I actually visit, and I know you've been to many of them. I visit a conference by Tony Robbins, UPW, Unleash the Power Within, where he uses a technique where you're going deep into visualization, where you want to go and what is important to you. And that's where I instantly through these 4 days, I worked on my roadmap for the future, which got me back here in the Netherlands eventually. It's a little faster than we anticipated, but it allowed me to really visualize what the next 5, 10, 20 years will look like for me. And then I was hit by a massive heart attack just a year later, which got me that almost death experience. But luckily, I had looked at big medical emergencies and assigned for that, and I was able to self-diagnose. Hey, I'm having a heart attack right now. Let me check into the hospital, and that saved me, because it was really like, if I would have laid down for half an hour, it would have been over. And so it allowed me to review that roadmap again that I worked on with Tony, not one-on-one, but I see it as he worked with the 5 to 6,000 people, but he worked with me, the feeling maybe, and made some really important decisions, like for the family and financially, career-wise, and in the person who I want to be, what I want to work on, which allowed me to do a lot of the things that I do right now. Like the reason why I joined Bitdefender is because I see it as a bigger calling to help educate people on the threat levels that we see every day increasing. It also allows me to work from the Netherlands while the HQ is in Romania. So it gives me the flexibility to go to the office here or work from home, that I can spend with my kids some more time when it really matters. So all these things happen for a reason. There is no coincidence, like you said. And embrace those dark moments, because those are the moments that you'll learn the most about yourself, about your family, about your friends, and the situation. What gets you there will get you out of there as well.
Beautifully said. And to tie in your experience with recognizing that you were having a heart attack and taking immediate massive action, that ties into what we've been talking about, tying in the data-driven nature of being prepared and knowledgeable and all that with the intuition. You had the intuition, the intuitive hit to go to the hospital and not go lay down and see if it went away. And you also had the data, because you had already known what some of the symptoms or signs of a heart attack were. So combining those two saved your life.
Yep. And the massive action part is definitely something I might have been already doing before I went to Tony Robbins, but afterwards I do it much more proactive, or much more in the known. I have to take massive action now, because otherwise you don't get there where you want to go. But it starts with the visualization, like knowing where you want to go to, and chunk it up, and then take massive action and execute.
So true. Dennis, thank you so much.
Good
this
lessons.
Was fabulous. Now, if our listener wants to follow you on social media, learn from you, and all that good stuff, connect with you, where should they go?
So because of my difficult last name, I have an online brand that I've built called The Next Corner. So you can find it on Twitter, The Next Corner. I have a website where I used to run some of my content, thenextcorner.net or dennisgoedegebuure.com. You can Google me, because unfortunately there is one other guy, unfortunately for him, because as an SEO I dominate the first page for my first and last name. But you can Google me and find more of my content.
Well, thank you, Dennis. And thank you, listener. And
it was a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to reconnect with you, Dennis. And listener, I'd love for you to make a difference in the world, not just in your marketing, but in the way you show up for your loved ones. So hopefully you've been inspired by this episode. I know I have. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.